Boom! It is 7 o'clock Wednesday night. I'm here with Spags Unfiltered, and we're going to have a discussion that I think is very necessary, and it's probably going to upset some people. And if it upsets you, say so in the comments, because we don't care. You can comment down below. You can comment in chat. Just do whatever you got to do. But this is a conversation that needs to be had, and so we're gonna go into some territory that probably makes some people kind of uncomfortable, to be honest with you. How you doing, Spags?
Good. You certainly picked the right guy to rile feathers, so let's do it.
Yep. Yeah. So before we start, let's say hi to everybody. So there's Zach from Unique Prepping. How you doing, man? Tambra from the great state of Texas. Lisa from Wichita. Skanes girl. The almost big. That's the cities in Kansas according to Spags. They're almost big.
The big almosts.
Yeah, the big almost. Who else we got? Lisa, Skanes, Unique. Sandra's here.
Your
Not
lovely
that
bride.
kind
I
of
see Yoda. Hi, Yoda.
From Texas. So we got people coming in here. Remember, folks, drop into live chat, get out of top chat, get into live chat, and we can better see your things. This is streaming over on Rumble. So if you don't like YouTube, you can go over on Rumble. I don't know if I can see people's comments from Rumble, though. I'll be honest with you. So you might want to.
You have to do what Local Prepper does to do all that.
So if you want to comment in the chat, you need to be over here. All right. So the topic, nice people doing evil stuff. Here's how this conversation came out. I'm going to talk about about she who must not be named, Taylor Swift. So in the run up to the Super Bowl, every channel that you went to was talking about how nice Taylor Swift was. Radio stations, sports stations, and by any measure, she is a nice and generous person. I mean, she does all kinds of charities that she doesn't tell people about. She tips people really well on her tours, and she just, everybody that's interacted with her individually says that she's a nice person. But she holds some views that I find completely horrid. Her promotion of abortion, the fact that she's willing, after everything that's happened over the last 3.5 years, she's gonna promote Biden again, or she is promoting Biden. I'm sure she holds anti-gun stances, much like her boyfriend. But that's the whole point. The whole point is just because you're a nice person doesn't mean, well, you could be a good person too, but it doesn't mean that you're moral or ethical. All right. And so before we do that, what I want to talk to Spags about, I want to get your opinion on something, Spags. What do you have? What's your take on people conflating nice and good with morally upright and virtuous?
People mistake nice for moral because nice is easy. And what people also forget is that morality is hard. It is hard to be a good person. It is not hard to be a nice person. Anybody can go along to get along, but again, what you get with that is oatmeal for brains running through your fingers on a warm summer day. There's no spine, there's no stiffness, there's no rigidity. It's like the word tolerant. Tolerant's a word that people with no standards use. It's not a word that people with standards actually use. And so if you have a strong moral fiber, chances are you're kind of going to be an asshole. And that's just reality, because you're the guy who's willing to stand up to people to say, no, that's wrong. And when you're the stick in the mud, people don't think you're nice. And so they conflate that with being immoral because, well, why do you have to be such a jerk? Frankly, the people who changed the world were mostly jerks. Most of them were people not afraid to say what they thought. And because of that, through changing the world for the better, they were more moral than the people who just smile, wave, sign autographs, and then get their write-off voucher from the Goodwill store because they gave a donation and they can save it on their taxes.
Right. And the one thing, so I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of reading about nice and good and morally upright and virtuous. The one thing that struck me was nice and good are subjective. it's subjective to your view of life, and it can change very easily, and like you said, it changes very easily because it's easy.
Mhm.
Whereas morally upright and virtuous are kind of set. They create the framework of what you live your life in. Now, if we're talking about a moral framework or an ethical framework, would you agree that kind of its value kind of depends on which direction it's pointed?
Sure, sure. I fully agree that there is objective moral truth and that there is objective morality, but people get to it in different ways, and we might not agree on that way. But then there are people who believe in a what they consider to be an objective morality, and they are not moral people. For example, we can use folks in certain Middle Eastern countries who thinks it's moral to strap a vest on, walk into a crowded market, and detonate themselves for the sake of their god. I mean, that's just one example, and it's an easy one to point to because we've all lived in a post 2001 world where we watched that stuff on the nightly news. But there's examples of that even within Western culture with Christianity and other Middle Eastern cultures with Judaism. They're all culpable and guilty of it. So yeah, it absolutely can frame the debate differently, which is why we have such a national debate about morality now, because people are attacking it from different sides, and on their side, in the trench they stand on, and under the flag they're willing to fall under, they're absolutely willing to justify anything.
Right. Okay, so it is a tough. It raises a tough question because we have to first we have to set the baseline. Where should our moral framework be pointed, right? And because fact of the matter is, nice people and good people. There's three types of decisions that I came up with. I was able to break it down into three categories. So we got poor decisions, immoral decisions, and evil decisions,
Okay.
right? And so the moral framework, if we don't start from a point where we can say, okay, what is a positive moral framework? What is a morally upright framework? And what is a negative moral framework? These are the type of things that build people's frameworks. So the poor decisions, if somebody makes a bad decision and something bad happens because of it, does that make them a bad person or evil?
No, I think it makes them a person. We all are subject to poor decision making, and a poor decision. I don't know how many people here have ever taken an IQ test, but they always ask these weird questions. If all zips are zeps and some zeps are zups, are all zups zeps? And the whole idea is to get you into a nonlinear method of thinking where you understand that just because things align here doesn't necessarily mean they do over here, right? So
Right.
no, I don't think you're morally a bad person because you make mistakes.
Okay. Now, immoral decisions that are, and I came up with this definition from reading today. Immoral decisions are decisions that are intentionally harmful, cruel, or result in significant and unjustifiable harm to others. Right? Those are immoral decisions. In your opinion, is it really easy for somebody that's making poor decisions to slide into that immoral category just because of
Yes.
natural progression?
Sure. I mean, you can have a glass of water that's clear, and you can start adding 1 grain of sand at a time, and eventually that water becomes murky. The water was neutral to begin with, and you can look at the grains of sand as the bad decisions. And this is why you have so many people steeped in bad decision-based poverty in the West. And it's not because they're necessarily bad, it's not because they're immoral, but over time, when mistakes become the norm and when mistakes become the pattern of behavior with no attempt and no reasonable attempt to better oneself, then yes, it becomes very easy to slide into immorality, which is why, what do you hear from all the folks in like the hood? Why sell drugs? Because it makes better money than working at McDonald's, and they justify a higher paycheck by doing something that many consider to be immoral. So yeah, I think it can slide.
Okay. And then the last decision, the last type of decision, the evil decision. And the two phrases I found most commonly with this was extreme moral or ethical wickedness. And I was like, okay, let's look up the definition. Let's figure out what the definition of wickedness is. The the quality, and this is from Oxford, the quality of being evil or morally wrong.
Mhm.
So, and tell me if you think I'm off base here. So you can actually go from making these immoral decisions and have an immoral framework, and very easily have those things classified as being evil. And I think the intentionality of it is the key part. And am I? You think I'm off base? Am I off base there? Is that kind of
I don't think so. I think that there's a natural progression there. So we can start out with your first example of bad decision making. And let's say you just are born into a situation and it becomes easy to make bad decisions. Well, bad decision making isn't necessarily immoral until it gets to a part where your decision making affects others, right? Where you're doing things that harm others. I would say evil is when you get to the point where you relish it, where you're like, fuck it, I'm doing this. I don't care. It doesn't bother me what anyone thinks. I'm going to keep doing it because I'm getting mine. And then you start to get into, sadism and narcissism where you enjoy the pain of others because, well, it makes you feel powerful. It makes you feel justified, maybe. Maybe it makes you feel better than everybody because you're not experiencing the pain that you're inflicting on others. And so you can see that it can be an arc that absolutely, or a downward spiral, if you'd rather.
right?
But sure.
Well, and I guess the next question naturally is if somebody's making these decisions and they continue to make them, like just like your murky water thing. At some point, like I'm going to refer back to people like Taylor Swift, the Biden supporters, people that are diehard Biden supporters, so to speak. Now, in my opinion, and after the last 3.5 years, actually more than that, because it was the run up to the election. If you can seriously say that you think him and his policies are the best choice, you are intentionally taking that stand. And I didn't know is not a good excuse anymore. And so and I guess the question is, looking at it from the outside, when do we say, hey, you've crossed that line? I mean, is it something that can be set in stone, or is it something that is dependent on the situation?
I think it's a lot like stage 4 cancer. You probably missed a lot of it until it metastasized to that point. I don't think, okay, let me be careful here. I do believe that there is an objective morality. Okay.
Okay.
I do not feel as though I'm qualified to speak to it well. I am a Christian, but I am by no means a traditional Christian. And so I'm still fleshing out for myself where I see that. All I'm willing to say on that is it is foundational for me.
Okay. Since you brought the topic up, let's set a baseline. Let's answer the basic question here. Are people good? Let's talk about the spiritual versus the reality of that statement right there, right? And this is where, and if you're not a Christian, this is really part of the base moral framework of Western culture, whether you like it or not. The whole concept here. So you've got fallen nature versus people are good. What's your comment on that?
There is no such thing as a truly good person.
Okay.
Now, I'll explain that further because that's going to piss some people off. I don't believe we're born neutral. I believe we're born with a fallen nature. And that is demonstrable within the first 3 years of being alive. You don't have to be taught to say yes. You have to be taught to say no. You don't have to be taught to not wallow in your own filth. You have to be taught to be clean. You do not have to taught to be an agent of chaos. Your room will be a mess if your parents don't train you otherwise. You have to learn to be an agent of order. So we are not born neutral, and I believe we are fallen in our very nature. Now, not to get preachy about that, because I don't feel like that's, my role to be. What I will say is I do believe there's absolute evil, but I do not believe in our realm there's absolute good. I think what you have is a sliding scale of working towards the perfection that we are told that we're to do in our striving to be like, Christ-like.
Mm-hmm.
But if we as people on our own could absolutely achieve goodness, then we wouldn't need all the other things that we absolutely have learned we do need for society to be at least civilized. And so, no, I don't believe people are basically good.
Okay. Well,
it takes work to be good.
I agree. The fallen nature of man suggests that we're inherently flawed and inclined towards selfishness and sin. Whereas the whole concept of people are inherently good is based on people's potential for altruism. Yes. Right? So you've got the fallen nature is an immovable object, if you will. Whereas people's potential, that's a very subjective thing, and like you said, the reality of it all is that we aren't. And we were talking about it before we got on. You made the comment that if shift happens or the end of the world happens and people are starving, they're going to revert back to their base nature, and very few people, unless they've worked very hard at it, are going to rise above that base nature. And that's one of the reasons why I think these type of conversations are important, because it allows us to think about these things and gets us, it strengthens us. It hones us for whenever those times come, right? And there's a book. Have you read the Screw Tape Letters?
No. By
C.S. Lewis? Okay, no. Synopsis. The Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, he was a Christian author, of course. Everybody might know him from The Witch, the Wardrobe, and Wine. Mm-hmm. But Screw Tape Letters was a bunch of letters that a major demon had written to a lesser demon who was in charge of bringing souls to hell. And so he was asking for advice how to be better at his job. And one of the questions that the lesser demon asks is, what are 3 things I can do to help people on the road to hell? And the very first suggestion that Screw Tape gives him is convince people that they're good. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And so that leads into the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yes. And that's where we're going to go next. We're going to start talking about that. So let's talk about poor decisions versus immoral decisions. Poor decisions don't make people a bad person.
Right.
Right?
I agree.
But as you said, you could very easily, in your attempt to be good and nice, you could very easily start making decisions that are immoral. So let's try to come up with just a handful of things that are going on in our country right now, or in the world, if you will, too, that exemplify that. And the first one I thought of was the welfare state. Sure. Because would you agree? And if you're in chat, put it in chat. Would you agree that it's a good thing for us to help out people that are in need? And I would hope that everybody in there would say yes, that it is a good idea. But what are some of the downsides of the welfare state?
Oh God, how long do we have?
Go for it.
Okay, so 1, it makes people dependent, and dependency leads to laziness. 2, it centralizes the concept of charity, which is supposed to be something we do ourselves because we believe it's right, and takes it and turns it into a forced, non-voluntary thing. And on top of that, it then takes your charity money and puts it into things that may or may not truly be charitable.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between charity and enablement, and welfare is more of an enablement structure,
Right.
geared to churn out votes. And there are so many people today, especially on the political left, and I'll start out by I'm sure I'll pick on the right at some point tonight, but we'll start picking out on the left. The left tends to be full of very lazy people ideologically, and so it becomes even easier for them to accept that by gladly paying their taxes and knowing that those taxes supposedly go towards this robust social safety net, they feel that they're charitable. And they don't realize that in so doing, and in voting for politicians and policies that increase the size of the welfare state, which then also increases the percentages of taxes, that they're taking money away from hardworking people who otherwise need to feed their own children and making them live paycheck to paycheck because now they have less and less of their own money. And it's almost a reverse effect, except for the targeted few who get to be the recipient of that stolen money.
Right. And some of the things, I wrote down a list. The dependency trap is a huge one. It builds generational dependency, and in the course of building that generational dependency, it tears the family apart, which, in my opinion, is one of the things that's been tearing our country apart from the very bottom up. It's destroying the foundational framework that we've got for building a good and robust society. And then, like you mentioned, the inefficiency of it all. Our money would be much better spent if we were able to give it through churches and do it that way, in my opinion.
Yep.
Another one that I thought about, and this may upset some people, I don't care, is abortion. Yep. I know a lot of really nice and good people that consider themselves Christian that are pro-abortion. And no matter what you say to them, they think that they are helping people by killing unborn children.
Yes.
And it's so bad. This one is so bad. You know why they quit using the word fetus? Do you know what the Latin translation of fetus is?
It's baby,
it's literally,
isn't it?
Offspring.
Or child.
It's offspring.
Yeah, it's personal.
And so you're not only doing that, but in the process of doing that, you're destroying the future. Mm-hmm. I mean, who knows? The person that was going to cure cancer may have been an aborted baby.
Sure.
And so it's bad. And so, but you've got these people, and how. This goes back to the question about, when does it become when does it go from a bad decision to an immoral decision to a wicked decision?
Right.
Right. And
God,
I have Go ahead.
To all the women in the audience, I will start out by saying, I know that I cannot be RAPED'd by my uncle and impregnated. I understand that anything I say about this is my opinion only, and I understand that, and please understand, I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking for me. I had a conversation on Facebook years ago when I was still on that satanic platform, and the guy literally said it's better to be murdered in the womb than to be born poor. And he firmly believed this. And he believed this because he bought into Marxist ideology. He was a Bolshevik. He was openly socialist, not like Democrat socialist. He was full on hammer and sickle. He was a straight socialist. And he absolutely believed that the world was a better place if the people who, in his mind, shouldn't procreate didn't. Now, you can make all sorts of really shallow economic arguments for abortion. But they're very shallow because at the basis of all human rights is the right to self-autonomy. And so when you take any position that asserts that the very right to existence is held in the hands of somebody other than the person whose existence you're talking about, you are advocating for a code that allows essentially for living slavery.
Yeah.
And slavery is immoral, and murder is immoral. And so when you have a very pro-choice, which I hate the terms pro-choice and pro-life. They're dishonest.
Uh-oh.
It's pro-death of who you deem to be worthy of death, and screw the rest is what it is. And so yes, I'm very, very firmly in the camp of being against abortion. Now, I understand that there are plenty of people who are born into some pretty shitty circumstances. And I understand that there are some people who get very desperate. And I understand that there are some people who get to a point where their back is against the wall, at least in their mind. They have no one to help them. There is no family. There's no father figure in the life. There's no mother in the life. There's a mountain of debt, a mountain of bills, and all of a sudden, bam, right? So we can sympathize with the circumstances that would lead up to somebody being in a position to make that decision. And if it were to happen, it is absolutely forgivable. Okay, this is one area where I think that the right wing has failed, is they have taken the abortion debate and framed it in a way where it almost becomes the unpardonable sin, where it's unforgivable, and where there's no understanding of the circumstances that may have led to a human being in a position to feel that they needed to make that kind of decision. And so I think we need to treat these women, in many cases anyway, with love, with compassion. And if they ask, we have to be honest about our feelings on this. Now transition to 2024, where we have these chicks running around with t-shirts with their abortion count on it. And they're openly bragging about on TikTok of in front of a Planned Parenthood. I've seen this shit where they're like 24 and they're like, well, 12th time here.
Yep.
That's where you've gone from making a mistake and an arguably immoral decision to now being evil, as far as I'm concerned, because you have now turned this into an assembly line of death. And as a Christian, I absolutely believe that Planned Parenthood is a physical embodiment of Moloch worship. It is a assembly line of child sacrifice. I think it's masked under a god, this weird blanket of rights and female and women's rights and women's liberation and all these fancy terms. But in my mind, personally, I believe Planned Parenthood is an altar towards Moloch, and it is an assembly line of sending souls to feed that dark energy. So if you're the person who's on TikTok and you're videotaping yourself nonchalantly saying, well, 12th time here, you're fucking evil.
Okay. There you go. I can't disagree. You know, I saw a video of a street preacher, and somebody made the comment that they could not believe in a God that would kill people, because, you know, the Old Testament is full of wrath and there's a lot of judgment going on, and these good people, to them that's bad, right? So he asked the question. He said, where do you stand on the abortion issue? And she was, well, of course I'm pro-choice. And he responded with, how come when God, the creator of the universe, exercises that judgment, he's bad, but whenever you as an individual exercise that judgment to kill a person, then you're good? Why is that? And I that really struck me. I'd never looked at it in that respect, but it really did. So let's shelve the whole rape part of that. I'm grape. We're supposed to say grape. I'm sorry. Let's shelve that, because that I know. I'm sorry. Algorithm, please don't unplug me. Let's shelve that, because that's important. That's important to the conversation as we go along. Okay. Sure. The next one that I came up with that just because it's we're surrounded by it so much and it's what people are talking about is the trans issue. You know, this is one of those things where people want to be supportive. All right. And let's set aside the fact that the trans movement was started by a bunch of socialists back in the early 70s to overthrow Western culture. Let's set that aside because that's not germane to the conversation at this point. We can that's a whole nother video.
Right. It wouldn't matter if it's true or not because there's nothing you can do to change it.
No, it is true. It is true. I read that.
Oh, I know it is. I'm just saying that, yeah, you're right. It's irrelevant at this stage.
Yeah, right. So these people, they want to be good, and in supporting these people, they promote not taking care of the mental health aspect of gender dysphoria, and they have literally reclassified that mental health issue as being normal. In fact, it is the only mental health thing in the entire country that is promoted and not treated. Right? Well, not treated. Not treated is not the right word. It's not something. These other ones like depression, all that stuff. They don't go. Hey, go out and be depressed. Right?
Right.
So,
right.
So they're doing that.
Yeah.
And I found a study. It was a Scandinavian study. It was in Norway. They did a study, and Norway is a very, very open and supportive country of the idea of transgenderism. Right?
Nice.
They're very, and they did a study of like 1,200 post-op trans people, and what they found was that these people, they were told that having these surgeries would fix the problem. They would changing the body would fix the mind. But what they found out with after that final surgery, the people that had those surgeries were 20 times more likely to commit suicide than their peers in the same group that did not. So, and so, and we've got medical people, and this is where that whole poor decision and moral decision and wicked comes in, because if you're a medical person, your job is to inherently help these people, and you're not.
Sure.
Right? There are people out there that are promoting this stuff, knowing these facts, right? So that's one. And then, I'm sorry, mutilating children is that's beyond the pale in my book.
Yes.
Physically mutilating children. If somebody's over 18, I'm not gonna advocate it, and I'm not gonna say it's a good thing, but it's an adult's decision. It's not a child's decision, right? And we can do a whole another thing about that discussion. But the one thing I found, and this gets into the whole great category here. So I found an article recently published in January from the National Health Society in Britain, British NAS, or National Health Service. They publicly stated that trans women's milk is just as good for babies as regular women's milk. Now, that's an absurdity, right? It's beyond. It's so crazy. I mean, any guy that has stuff coming out of his that's lactating, that is artificial and it's full of chemicals. In fact, the one rebuttal I heard to the article was that the one chemical in the testosterone blockers that causes men to lactate is cancer causing.
Yes.
And so the NHS is advocating sticking this into babies' bodies, right? So that's an absurdity. Another one, the GRAP, the one that we put on the shelf. Statistically, that makes up like less than 2% of all abortions. And so they're able to take this small percentage and argue it so that it's literally the entire topic of conversation for some people, right? And so that brings us to the next thing, this believing absurdities. And I told you, I gave you this quote before we started. All right, I found a quote. It's by Voltaire. And it says, "If I can get you to believe in absurdities, I can get you to commit atrocities." Right? And that's the reason why that's important now is because we have to look at where our culture is. And talk to us a little bit about some of the absurdities that we're facing now. I want to get your take on them.
All American Prepper is correct, by the way.
I missed it. Okay.
It's only 3 comments up. He says the left is a death cult.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to go back to when you asked me about good and evil, and I said that there is absolute evil. That in our plane, there is not absolute good, but there is absolute evil. I believe that in the West, and by the West, I mean anywhere that doesn't, that's north of the equator, St. Petersburg, Moscow, over to us, right? The West,
Okay.
Europe, us. The devil will fight his hardest battles in places where he is losing. Okay, he doesn't have to work to get the cannibals. He doesn't have to work to get the people who shrink heads. He doesn't have to work to get the people who maul each other to death in sub-Saharan Africa with machetes and pitchforks and sides. He's got them. He has to work to destroy the bastions of light that promote moral virtue. And I will unapologetically say that's the West. At least it used to be. We were the experiment to mainstream morality in a way where it could be accessed to create healthy societies. And I'll leave it in that wording specifically because I know that there's a lot of nuance there. And there's some guys who are going to take me to task. Look, man, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just here to give you my perspective. So the left, from about the time of the Bolshevik movements and the Bolshevik revolutions in Russia that spilled into this country in the early 1900s, it has been a constant drumbeat. And there is a reason that the political left is winning. It's not because their ideas are good. It's not because their ideas bring economic freedom to the world. It's not because their ideas promote family values. It's because their ideas are so heinous that they know it takes forever to convince people to adopt them. And so they subliminally interject these little torpedoes, and they do it through the media, through entertainment, through politics, through the education system. You name it, they're using it. And so over time, they have this gradual effect where they just calcify, if you will, your soul and your heart as a people to where you're no longer sensitive to the things that would have once been aghast to talk about in polite society. And so, yes, the trans thing, the abortion thing, to me, it's all wrapped into one big bundle. And that bundle is the destruction of humanity, because humanity is the embodiment of the representation of God. We are made in his image. And the way Lucifer fights that is to destroy the image. So first he has to destroy women, because by destroying women, you destroy the family. Women are the foundation of the family. Men may be the head of the home, but the woman is the foundation of the family. You destroy women, first and foremost. You teach them that they don't need men. You teach them that it's not noble and righteous to have children and to create families. You teach them that going out into the world and being every bit as tough as a guy is every bit as noble as having a family. And then you take that one step further and you convince women to go into their late 30s, early 40s without having children. And then we wonder why it becomes harder. We wonder why the birth rates in civilized countries are on such a massive decline. And then once you've got the women, and once you've got the family, and once you've got education, now you go for the kids. And that is the final death throw of any civilized country, is to go for the children, where now we have pieces of shit getting up, literally giving TED Talks about why pedophilia should be accepted and why we should view it as just another orientation. All of this is wrapped together. First, we can kill the kids at will. Next, we can decide that not even having them is virtuous because, well, we have to save the planet and we have to get to net zero on our carbon emissions, which ultimately kills the poorest people on the planet, because poor people who are poor because of energy dependence. They're not energy independent. So when you take coal, for example, away from the poorest people and force them to burn hay and wood, that's carcinogenic within the home, and it reduces people to not only having to source their food every day, but to source the way in which they cook it. That doesn't leave much time for much else. And so You take the green movement, which is part of the left, that's killing poor people all over the world. And while little kids in Africa are digging for, rhodium and cobalt and dying by the time they're 12, 15 years old, working in these evil strip mines just so that rich people in the West can parade their virtue around in their Prius, right? And then you take the trans movement. Now what few kids are left, what few kids are being born to this civilization, we're now going to train them that they aren't what they were born to be, that it's perfectly normal to think you're something else, and that you want puberty blockers, and you want to have parts of your body lopped off. This whole thing started at one place. The egg of Bolshevikism is what the seed was to destroy the West. And it has gone full circle with Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood way back in the day, which was a eugenicist movement to kill homosexuals, blacks, and gypsies, essentially, and mentally challenged people. All the way now to the few kids that are left, we're going to destroy them to the point where 30% of children under the age of 14 today identify at least as pansexual or asexual. That is a huge number.
Yep. And so that leads back to the committing atrocities thing. And that's why this conversation is important as well, because we're to the point in our society where people are starting to believe these absurdities. And if they and eventually it's gonna turn. And one of the things, did you ever read Ordinary Men? The book
Yep.
Ordinary Men? Okay. So anybody that's never read it, so Ordinary Men is about the Reserve Police Battalion 101 from Hamburg, Germany. It's a bunch of middle-aged police officers from Hamburg, Germany in 1940 that were mobilized by the Nazi war machine and sent to Poland. And they were part of Einsatzgruppen 1. And their job was to enact the final solution. And so these guys, these gentlemen were, by all accounts, stalwarts in the community. They were trusted as policemen, and they were family men. And they went there and they were lining people up along trenches and putting bullets in the back of their head. And they exterminated somewhere around 120,000 people in the Lublin area of Germany. If you've never read the book Ordinary Men, I highly suggest it as a read, because it's a great read. So this is what can happen in our society, because these guys, I'm positive. In fact, there was a lot of alcoholism, and there were several suicides, and they were all offered the opportunity to go home, and they did not have to do it. But because they were part of the group, they did not do it. And so these guys would go do their job, patently evil, go back to the barracks and drink themselves into a stupor and get up and do it the very next day. This is one of the things why I think we see so much cognitive dissonance on the socialist side of the political spectrum, because deep down inside, a lot of these people understand that they are absurdities, but they do them anyway because it makes them a good person. They're searching to be a nice person, be viewed as virtuous and good. But this is what it can lead to. So Spags,
Yeah, you're good.
That led me, that thinking about the what believing in absurdities could lead to, got me thinking about genocide and politicide. Right? So everybody knows what genocide is. Genocide is ethnic cleansing, killing, often unaliving a group of people because of their ethnic background. Politicide is unaliving a group of people because of their political beliefs. All right. So Spags, you wanna start the conversation about that? I think if you turn your mic down a little bit, you might not have that scratching.
Oh, that was just I was muting it. Jenny came in to grab my cup.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
All right, so we're talking about politicide.
Politicide and or genocide, because the
Okay.
different stages are the same.
They are, and all of them can be very easily framed under one other type of side, and that's democide, which is death by government. You have to
Okay.
have a central collating story to get people to be willing to engage in such evil things. And you're right, it's average people that do this. It's not the elites coming down from their ivory towers with a golden axe beheading the masses for daring to disagree with them. It is average people whose paychecks are absolutely dependent on whether or not um, you follow their orders, which is why it's often seen on memes today and on other forms of internet art. Um, the fall of every society comes at the hands of those just doing their jobs. And this is why it was so disappointing for so many decades to see the right wing get on board with the thin blue line mentality, because you were literally watching the people who claimed to be for freedom be essentially subjected to gang mentality in its own round, by saying that the enforcers of government decrees should be revered above all else, and they could do no wrong, and no matter what, it was walk a mile in their shoes, right? And I'm not being disparaging of people who are engaged in peacekeeping. Peace officers are absolutely necessary for a free society to operate. But we don't have peace officers anymore. And that's where, as you call it, politicide is going to become a very real possibility. The folks who wear the uniform today are not peace officers. The folks who are in other uniforms today are not soldiers representing you. They wear the colors of the nation's flag of which they swear loyalty to. And that is not you. And again, I'm not picking on all cops or all troops or all Marines or all sailors. And I'm not taking that left-wing view. But what I am saying is that if you're not left-wing, you still have to be willing to be very critical of people who have the power of the sword. And you have to be willing in a free society to be ultra critical of them, regardless of whether you appreciate them or not. Okay, the person who built my home, I'm very appreciative of the fact they built my home. But it doesn't mean if they didn't follow the plans correctly, I'm not going to be critical, right?
Right.
So when you have a country where it is so divided, and you literally have not just police forces, but military National Guard units, depending on the states in which they are housed, who probably have a very common view with the majority of the people in that area. Let's take the California Highway Patrol. They're none too happy to do gun confiscations. You know, they're none too happy to turn a blind eye to people selling methamphetamines in San Francisco because, well, you know, you got to be tolerant, right?
Mm-hmm. They're good
And
people.
They are, right? And let's take that a step further. Let's really ruffle some feathers here. Nobody you know in a uniform ever has fought for you. They have not served you. Everybody, including and I did 16 years in the Army as a cop, for anybody who wants to say I'm just being anti-things. The fact of the matter is that I didn't serve you for 16 years. I served the United States. And the United States sent me abroad to do things you probably never would have approved of if it had been sent to you on a general ballot. And I fought in wars that you probably at some point as a citizen were like, why are we doing this? And lives were lost rapidly on both sides. Morals were compromised on both sides. Everybody remembers the whole, right? Just saying, the good guys absolutely can become the bad guys because there is no such thing as absolute good in humanity.
And
so, yeah, I think politicide is very real in a world where you have political control over the people with guns.
I agree with you on the who people serve, because in retrospect, at one point in my career, I was literally a pirate with a letter of marque from the UN.
Yeah.
That was our job. Our job was to go out and enforce the UN blockade, and we were stopping. Now I still there's a part of me that still thinks we were doing the right thing at the time, but the simple fact is, I wasn't serving the people of the United States in that respect. And if I were to ever had to get in a fight, I wasn't fighting for anybody back home. I was fighting for the person next to me.
Right.
You know, so you're absolutely right.
What if they tore off across the battlefield doing something they shouldn't? I would have had their back. That's my brother in arms.
That's right.
Again, not even a bad decision. That's just an immoral decision. Okay, you're going to go over here and do this shit. I've got your back. And there was a few things I know I would have not backed my fellow soldiers up on. If I'd caught someone engaging in that thing we put on the shelf, I would have absolutely probably just shot them on the site, because that sort of shit really bothers me. But if they were like looting, you know?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So we kind of discussed the politicide and genocide and democide. So there's actually a 10-stage hierarchy of these things. And I want to go through these, and I want your opinion on where we are as a country on this scale. And this is where you can rip on either side of the political spectrum. In fact, I know you're going to, all right? Because the left is, the right is just as guilty as the left, and people in this chat are guilty of some of the stuff, and I'm guilty of it, and I know that you're guilty of it.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to get to a point where we need to talk about where's the breaking point, right? When do you cross that line? Okay. So the first stage is classification, creating an us versus them environment. We do that on a daily basis.
It's inbred in our DNA. We can never get away from that, no matter how much we try.
Yeah.
That's evolution, and there's no getting away from that.
Okay.
I promise you, 12,000 years ago, if you took somebody from Tahiti and somebody from Norway and stuck them on a plane together, and they would instantly try to kill each other because they don't look the same.
Right. Right. And we do it. Everybody does it. I mean, it's somebody that does not look like us is inherently not part of our tribe. Right. As a culture, it's just part of human nature, and it's something that we have to overcome. Right. So if you're on the right and you're doing this, and you are sitting here shaking your head, yeah, the left does that. We do it too. We do it all the time. Right. And there's nothing wrong with tribalism, in my opinion.
No.
It's the problem with tribalism arises when it starts doing other things. All right. So the second stage, the second stage is symbolization. We give them symbols, names to set them apart.
Sure.
Right. And this is one of the reasons why I changed my view on the left-right political spectrum. Because I used to be the socialist, communists are on the left, conservatives are on the right. That is not how it's built. Realistically, that's not how it's built, and it's counterproductive. If you want to talk left and right, or a sliding scale of some sort, up and down, it's control and no control.
Yes.
And there are some very nice and some very good and well-intentioned people that are solidly on the control side of that equation, right? You know, how do we overcome this? How do we break the cycle at this stage of the game? You know, the symbolization.
Wow, that is a complex answer, but I would say a very good beginning point would be to dismantle and destroy the Department of Education. When you give the government sole power to determine education standards for 320 million people, you're going to get an education standard that is built to the lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator isn't you or me or anybody else in this chat. It's non-thinking, mouth-breathing neckbeards who scream source when you tell them that only women can have babies.
Yeah. Okay, so and that leads on to the next one. Speaking of neckbeards, polarization. Okay, at this stage, the extremists start driving groups apart. Mm-hmm. Where do you see us as a culture in that regard?
I think it's it's a fork in the road, and you are either on this side, where anybody who doesn't agree with you is a Nazi, is a racist, is a xenophobe, is a transphobe, is a homophobe, is a chauvinist, is a patriarchal asshole, blah, blah, blah. Other fork of the road is it's cool when my side does it. MAGA, 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 tread harder, daddy, because you are going to make some really cool promises on TV and you say really, really fun things. Sorry, MAGA people, you're a cult. Just like the Biden people. You are cults of personality worshiping a human being. You have broken the second commandment to the 10 commandments, and you have put a graven image in front of you.
Yep. And when he says MAGA, the MAGA people, he's talking about the people that will look at the candidate and see nothing wrong. He's a very
the ones who have Trump underwear.
Right.
Just saying, man. I mean, graven images. The ones who have like 15 Trump coins and 32 autographed Trump pictures and have a Trump flag above their American flag and all this other stuff. And it's like, you know, the QAnon tards who are like white hatters in the army who can't actually do anything. I'm talking about you people. You people are ridiculous. You've absolutely turned every bit as fanatical as the political leftists.
Okay, so this brings up a good question at this stage of the game. So I firmly stand behind my idea that there's two Americas. There's the America of the founding fathers, the ideas that formed the Constitution and formed the country, and then there's the America that is Marxist and believes in collectivism and wants to change the framework that built the country. You can't; those two cannot exist at the same place at the same time.
No,
that's just by its very nature is polarizing, isn't it?
It is.
You know,
baking soda and vinegar, it doesn't work.
So is it a hurdle that's insurmountable, or is it something that can be, without the destruction of one of the two ideologies, is it a hurdle that can be ultimately gotten over, or are we just delaying the inevitable?
We are delaying the inevitable. There is no political solution. Again, the people fomenting the vast majority of this come in two camps, and a good chunk of them control the education system. Unless you're willing to arrest control of what your children intake, you will never undo this cycle. If you're not willing to take away their cell phones and their tablets, and you're not willing to pull them out of public school, and you're not willing to do all these things, and I know it's hard. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I certainly am not. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying it's going to take extreme measures to where we are willing to inconvenience ourselves. And that is something American parents, by and large, are really bad at. And the same parents who live vicariously through their kids playing organized sports, or who have to be in an adult bowling league and have poker nights with the boys, or bar nights with the boys, or the girls go out on their drunken wine and clay pottery things all the time. You know, and I'm not saying any of that stuff's intrinsically bad, but there's a lot of people today who are super entertainment focused, and that's all they give a shit about. Mm-hmm. You know. If that's the case, no, there is no solution. It's going to become violent, and you're going to have to pick a side.
As far as the entertainment thing goes, I posted in my community page today a link to the latest video by Academy of Ideas, and it compares the tyranny of 1984 with the tyranny of A Brave New World. And if you go watch that video, and you think really hard about where we are, we're someplace in between those two. And what Spags was just talking about is that tyranny of hedonism, and
yes,
and in my opinion, this is the breaking point. If we don't get the polarization taken care of, the next stages are going to happen, and I'm going to argue that they are already happening at a very low level in this country. And when we go through it, the next two or three can happen simultaneously. Because we see a real world examples all the time. So the next step after polarization, and mind you, this is only 4, right? And we're already seeing this come to pass. Discrimination. Dominant groups use laws, customs, and political power to deny the rights of other groups.
Yes.
We see that all the time. In fact,
yes.
There are a group of individuals sitting in federal custody right now that haven't had a trial in 2 years because of that very issue, you know. And we mentioned candidate Trump. They're using lawfare against him.
Yes, they are.
And there are there any examples of the non-leftist side doing the same thing?
Of course there are. Republicans and Christians had no business utilizing the power of the state to forbid gay marriage. You cannot make the contention that marriage is a religious institution and therefore should be adjudicated by the church, and then use the power of the state to keep people from getting married you don't think should get married. And I'm not making my opinion known on gay marriage. I'm not saying gay marriage is bad or good. That's not the point of this conversation. We can have that conversation another time. But the point is that gay people get taxed too. And as long as the state claims a monopoly on the right to issue marriage licenses, they do not have a legal or moral ground to stand on to deny services only issued by the state if they're not going to issue a refund. And Christians, Western Christians, used the power of the government through the entire moral majority of the 80s. And now look at the whirlwind of fuck pie they're inheriting for their children, because they couldn't just shut up and maybe compromise a bit and say, fine, have your civil unions. Have the right to end-of-life decision-making. Have the right to put each other on your health insurance. Why did that bother anybody? It didn't.
Right.
And if they had probably not made that such a central topic in the 80s and early 90s, we might not see the entire backlash from the EIEIO crowd today that we are.
Right.
So yeah, the right wing has done it, absolutely.
I'm on the same page with you. I'm a firm believer that the state has no business being in the marriage business.
Yep.
And the
100%.
church should have put their foot down and Of course, I'm also a firm believer that if you're a church with a nonprofit categorization, you are an agent of the state. Mm-hmm. Just by definition, you are an agent of the state. So the next one, after discrimination comes dehumanization.
Yep.
And this is when one group treats another group as second-class citizens. Members of the persecuted group may be compared to animals, parasites, insects, or diseases. Boy, both sides of the spectrum do that, don't they?
They do, but I will honestly say at this point the left has a monopoly on that one. I mean, they've both done it, right? I mean, look at Fred Phelps. He's arguably that's my backyard, is Fred Phelps in the Westboro Baptist Church, and he called gay people beasts and all these sorts of things, all these dehumanizing terms. And look, man, I'm not going to tell you whether you should or shouldn't think that, because that's your business. What you believe about certain issues is between you and God, not between you and me. But when you go on TV and radio and you're purposefully offensive with that sort of language in an antagonistic sort of way, I'm pretty sure there's a verse in the New Testament about being a stumbling block for the sake of Christ, and that those who are stumbling blocks will not be given access to glory, if I'm not mistaken in that. So, yeah, the right's done it, but right now it's almost entirely the left wing doing this shit.
Right. Well, and it gets to the point. This is where it goes back to the original part of the conversation about being a nice person or a good person and how it can lead to other things. Because the dehumanization of people, the right are Nazis. Nazis are bad.
Right.
So it becomes proper to punch a Nazi.
Right.
Right?
Yep. I want to address Starla's point because you put it up on the screen, if that's okay.
Okay.
She did say, yes, not all Trump supporters are cultists. It's the far MAGA crowd that's the cultist. The ones who are absolutely hanging on every word he says. I have no problem if you want to vote for Trump, personally. I kind of miss $1.87 gallon of gas and a mean tweet. It was fun. Now, as a libertarian anarchist, I just don't vote in national elections. It's a complete waste of time. I can wipe my ass on election day and come up with a better result than anyone's going to vote into office. So have your elections, enjoy them. It's the WWE of the military industrial complex. Fall for it all you want, not my problem. But I will agree with her that not all Trump supporters are cultists, just the culty ones.
Yeah. Well, and we know who they are. There's the stumbling block quote from Potpourri. Therefore, let us not pass judgment on one another any longer, but rather decide never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother.
Right.
And I've totally lost my train of thought.
I was homeschooled for 12 years. I get you.
The dehumanization. leads to worse things. It really does. You know, um, the next one, organization. Uh, it's always organized, usually by the state, though sometimes informally or by terrorist groups. Right. So we're seeing an organization there right now, but it's not done. I couldn't identify any actors. Right. I'm seeing that the violent part of it coming from individuals. I'm not. Can you identify any actors where it's starting to become organized? I mean, there are people out there like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Weatherman
dude.
Group.
2020, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, absolutely are CIA controlled street muscle. There's a little known fact that people do not know. In 1947, in the first Italian uh, election after World War II, there was a pro-Western candidate and a pro-communist candidate. The CIA was formed specifically to interfere and sway that election. People don't know that. And the Sicilian mob, of which my family has ancestry in, were persecuted by Mussolini. And so, because of that, the CIA utilized street muscle, Sicilian mobsters, in fixing the 1940, it was either 1947 or 1948, the Italian election. There's leaked documents that show that if Trump had actually won 2020, and by actually won, I mean it had gone all the way through and he was in the White House today, that there were plans to utilize Black Lives Matter and Antifa to stage dissent and violent revolution across the country. There are leaked memos that show that both FBI and CIA insurgents, because that's what they are, were working actively with the AFL-CIO to stage labor strikes across the United States should he have made it into the White House a second time. It's absolutely organized. It's absolutely violent. We're there.
But does it raise to the level of the pogroms, like what happened in Turkey with the Armenians or the Ukrainians, Stalinist Russia and the Ukrainians, or the Holocaust? Does it raise to that level?
Yes.
Of
Look at the Night of the Long Knives, which happened in 1937 or 38 when Hitler rose to power.
Okay.
There was no concentration camps yet, but there were a bunch of dudes running around in brown shirts with beat sticks taking out the opposition. We absolutely are there. The only difference now is that we have Hollywood to mask everything and do a lot of this through the use of psychological operations. It was what the whole CIA was invented to do, and PSYOPs. That's what all of that is for. It's to make this where there doesn't have to be as many people swinging clubs, but it doesn't mean there's not people swinging clubs.
Guy, it's funny that you should mention that. I actually saw a video today while I was working on the computer. It was about the movie Starship Troopers. The podcast of the Lotus Eaters had it. And Paul Verhoeven, the director of the movie, dressed everybody up, and everybody walked away from it saying it was about fascism. Now, if you've ever read Starship Troopers, they start every single chapter with a quote from George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. George Washington, the quintessential fascist, right? And that book is so libertarian that you can smell it, right? Hollywood used it as a vehicle to knock democracy as fascism. Seriously, it was that screwed up. So yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I just happened to watch that today at some point.
I know this is off topic, and I don't want to lose this comment, so I'm just going to say this real quick to Joseph G.
Okay.
Email me later about what a Catholic integralist is. I'm kind of interested to know what that means. I've never heard that term. So Bobby Spags 79 at gmail.com. I'd be interested to learn more about what that means.
Right. That's the way I saw that, but the conversation had moved past it, and I was like, okay,
yeah, I've never heard that term. I'm really interested to know what that means.
Okay.
Because I am not a denominational Christian at all. I don't subscribe to any one particular camp, but I do find a lot of intriguing ideology in the Orthodox Church. And I know the Orthodox Church split from the Catholics during the Great Schism. And I think that pretty much the Orthodox Church kind of went more philosophical with Christianity, and the Catholic Church maintained more of a militant adherence to dogma than, say, the Orthodox did. But I would really like to know what that means.
There you go. And he said okay. But okay, so far we've got 3 of the stages that we're already in, and it's actively taking place in our culture now. The next one, preparation. A plan is made. They often use euphemisms to cloak their intentions. Would you say that would you say that Bill Ayers and his buddies sitting around talking about how up to 1.25 million people may have to be exterminated or sent to camps is the start of a plan, or a former presidential candidate saying that people need to be sent to re-education camps? Do you think that's a plan for me?
Yes, and I'll take it one step further.
Okay.
Let's go back to the CIA in 1948. The reason that the CIA justified its actions in meddling in a foreign election was that they said, quote, if the other side wins, this could be the last election in our lifetimes in Italy. Mm-hmm. Now, where have we heard that recently?
Gee, I don't know. Seems pretty recent, though. Seems pretty recent. I mean,
when you're told if a side wins legitimately in an election, that it could lead to the last free election in the history of elections, well, that's pretty inflammatory speech.
Well, and then that leads into what we're talking about, the doing stuff because you're a good person. You know, there were things done in 2020 because people were good people, and they felt that it was necessary to save everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And it resulted in certain outcomes that have been disastrous. You know, and so let's go back to the original part of the conversations. People that do that, are they simply misguided, or are they intentionally? They feel that the outcome is the right outcome, the good outcome.
Yes, this is where I part ways with people who are altruistic. I don't believe in altruism. I think altruism is just a Band-Aid that we put over bad decision making for good results, right? One thing that the Soviets said was that they were willing to take a step backward to take 2 steps forward, that the ends justified the means. Now, they weren't the first people, obviously, to say that, and plenty of other bad actors have said similar things, but the fact of the matter is that they did kind of coin the take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. I believe that was even something that Khrushchev said. So yeah, I mean that's a pretty easy answer.
Okay, so that leads to the next one: persecution. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say we have not reached this stage in an official capacity. I don't see. I see them trying to start persecuting people through censorship. They've done it in a soft manner. All right. The government interaction with social medias is a form of persecution to a certain group of people. The attack on the Second Amendment, even though it's been shot down, these attacks are ruled unconstitutional. But they haven't come to fruition. So in my mind, the persecution hasn't started in full.
You can put lipstick on a pig and it's still a weird looking pig, man.
Okay.
I think the persecution, I would agree it's not in full swing. We don't see people being rounded up, but there's still over 100 people right now in black sites because their cell phone pinged them in a geographical location on a specific day in January a few years ago. And we know that during the Obama years that there were secret prisons that the FBI manned in Chicago on the docks, where there were black sites where we were taking people from overseas and throwing them. At least that's what we were told. Who knows who the hell's really there? I could tell you a really interesting story about a time at Fort Riley, Kansas, right after 9/11, when there was an emergency aircraft landing at Manhattan Airport right there, and there was a particular kind of aircraft that landed there, emergency style, and I was sent there as an MP along with a bunch of other MPs, and we made a perimeter around that aircraft, and we heard the pilots talking about how they'd never launched that kind of an ordinance in the United States before, and how that camp was certainly not Al-Qaeda like we were told. And I'll just let you all marinate on that one for a hot minute.
So, okay, so your belief is that the persecution is happening just at a very low level, relatively speaking.
I think it's happening at way more than a low level. I just think we're too fucking stupid in the West to see it.
Okay.
I mean, when you have FBI agents raiding raw milk farms at gunpoint, we're in persecution mode. When you have the Obama IRS going in guns drawn on conservative businesses, we are in persecution mode. The difference now is that the media, as one of the 5 branches of your federal government, has the ability to shut down what you see and control what you see. And unless you're living local in some of these areas, and maybe you're on some, some dark website, or maybe you're on some black ham operator site where you're talking about what you're watching locally, people in California don't know what's happening in New York other than what they see on Fox News. Okay. Persecution is happening right now. We just don't know about it because we have no ability to keep up with stuff. The world has gotten so big, and yet our systems of information have been shut down to the point where it's all controlled. Well, everything is done with algorithm and AI now. You have no clue if what you're even reading anymore is accurate or true.
Okay, I will give you that point. That you've changed my mind on that. Right.
We're not in full swing. The trains aren't lining up yet. Okay, in Kansas City to load us up. We're not at like the steam gauge isn't pinging to the point where like the pipe's leaking. But we're fucking close, man.
Yeah, and my stance comes from the fact that I think what's going on now is more a bunch of fellow travelers versus an organized, people sitting in an office checking, like making charts and stuff, like the Nazis, or card catalogs, if you will, like a certain group of people did. So that's where my stance comes from. But I understand what you're saying, and I will acquiesce that point to you. Yes, it is happening. What's a good way to keep from? What's a good way to break the cycle at this point? That if persecution is, what's something that we shouldn't allow to happen?
We need to stop using the term "shouldn't allow." You use the term "shouldn't allow," and it shows that your motivation is outward versus inward.
Well, hold on a second. I'm talking about the Second Amendment, and we, as gun owners and American citizens, we have allowed a lot to happen. And if we allow them to continue along the path they are, then it's ultimately going to lead to where we're talking about. So that's when I say.
Who's the we that's allowing this to happen? What decision did you or I make that said, yes, you can do this?
I'm talking collectively. We haven't stopped it. So by not stopping it, we have de facto allowed it.
I would argue the opposite, that I am not part of a collective. I did not collectively agree to anything, nor am I part of any collective that has agreed to anything or not acted. Nobody knows the contents of my gun safe. And as far as I'm concerned, the Second Amendment is for amateurs. I don't need the Second Amendment. I don't need the Constitution. I don't need a piece of paper that a bunch of dudes in powdered wigs and wooden teeth wrote 250 some years ago to justify what I do. I am an anarchist. I do what I choose to do on my property, and I don't need anybody's permission.
Well,
and guess what? Every time someone gets on YouTube and makes another video about, what this gun decision right could mean for you, or what this new court ruling means for me, I laugh. I'm like, it means nothing for me. If I want to find something, I'm going to find it. There's nothing you're going to do to stop me. So I am freer than the people who wring their hands over the next court case or over the Second Amendment, or people who pledge $1,000 a year to the NRA. I don't care about any of that.
Okay. I'm tracking, man. That's good. Okay. But I still stand by my point that if we allow them to take guns away, then we deserve everything.
And when they come to my property or to a property of friends, and we're engaging in what we want to engage in, and that's when we have a choice to make. I'll leave that statement floating again. I'm not going to get too far into that, but
we're pretty much on the same page. I found the older I've gotten, the easier it is to stand by that statement. You know what I mean?
I was on the Fort Riley SWAT team for years, man. They trained me. Good luck.
Yeah, I'm with you. Probably not as good as you were, but okay. The next one, the ninth one. This is the ninth one. This is when things get really bad. Extermination. Extermination begins and quickly becomes mass killing, legally called genocide and politicide, but it's all under the guise of law. I arguably I don't see us as there. I know that
I don't think we're all the way there yet. No, I think we're on the verge. I still think we're probably a little bit before that stage. I don't think
the last
so.
Yeah, it's gone from possibility to probability in my mind. Just because of the polarization of the everybody. The last one is denial, and denial is the 10th stage, and it always follows what's happened. And we're already seeing some denial of the low-level things we're talking about. You know, the riots. You know, they're justifying it, literally at this point. You know, and at that point, is there any real reconciliation that can happen?
No. I'm under no obligation to reconcile or to forgive anybody who comes to me in that manner. There is no reconciliation. The minute you declare yourself to be an enemy of my family, you've declared yourself to be an enemy of my family. Now, I will not declare myself to be an enemy of any of you. And by you, I don't mean you or the folks in chat. I mean to the power establishment. I'm not your enemy. I'm perfectly content to live my life. Just don't make me an enemy. Because the minute you do, there is no reconciliation.
Right. Well, dude, we've been at this for an hour and 20 minutes. We covered quite a bit of ground, and I think we made a pretty good argument that the whole idea of somebody being a nice and good person can ultimately lead to what we were just talking about. You know, these people that we identified as being stuck in their phones and everything could very easily be led to do certain things, certain atrocities that are right now kind of unthinkable to most people, right? You know, and it could be everything from the pastor sitting in the pew telling his people to sing louder as the trains go by, to the guy that's rounding people up and sticking them in the train car itself.
I recall just a couple of years ago when people like us with the good sense and bad attitudes to say no to experimenting with drugs that were experimental themselves, that there were high-level people in both government and education and in entertainment who had no problem saying that we should die.
Yeah.
I recall people saying if you were unwilling to experiment with drugs, that your children should die. I remember people saying if you didn't experiment with drugs, that you should lose your business, that you should lose the right to vote, that you should be locked up and put in jail. I remember Jimmy Kimmel and Howard Stern and all those fuckers saying all kind of evil stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And nobody has been held accountable. And in spite of all the evidence to the contrary of what they believe, none of them has apologized.
Not one.
Not a single person. So to think that nice and good people are going to be on your side at the end of the day is kind of foolish, because most of them won't be. Popery says, this is what most horrific recent times it sticks with me in reference to what you just said.
It's
yes, I agree. That is
of the death cult that we were taught about, or that was mentioned earlier, right? When every decision ultimately leads to the death of at least a percentage of the society, your decision making, we can see what you're aiming at. It's not hard to discern that.
So I guess before we go, how do we insulate ourselves? I think the first thing we have to do is we as individuals need to decide where we are on the topic, and if we see somebody that's in that category we were talking about earlier, We need to call them on their beliefs, and we need to stand up and confront them. And I'm not saying get in their face like a vegan at a steak restaurant. You know, I'm talking in a polite and calm manner, and at the very least call them out. You know, and do it in a rational and understandable way.
The political left has gained the power, and by left I mean the uniparty. I mean, I'm not. It's left because even the right has now shifted to the left. The uniparty is the uniparty. The Bolsheviks. Let's just go with that word. The Bolsheviks in charge right now have only gotten there because they were willing to shout, because they were willing to be rude, because they were willing to be the vegan in the steakhouse. The reason that everybody else is losing is because we're polite. I'm of the opinion it's about time to take the gloves off and start getting right back in their faces and reminding them why it is I don't eat 90% soy in my fucking diet.
Okay. So do you start out?
I mean, it's either you start shouting them down and engage in the same types of tactics, or it's going to get physical.
Do you start default aggressive, or do you progress through it and you know,
my default is to laugh at them in their face. My default is to be rude to them. I owe them nothing. I owe them no quarter. I owe them no forgiveness. I can only turn the cheek once before they've both been hit. Buddy, the gloves are off. So if I see you in my school talking to my kids about slicing up their junk, I'm going to punch you in the face in front of the whole school. And I hope to God it gets live streamed on Facebook. I hope I get arrested. I hope I have an example made of me. The people who founded this country said, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. How many of the signers lived to see 5 years later? And it's only because of that we have the ability to do this on a screen today. And it's the slack-jawed reaction of the political right and the libertarians and the Christians who are all too happy to be appeasing and nice that have led to the situation in which we find ourselves now.
Apparently, according to my beloved, we'll be cellmates. God, I hope not.
Might be kind of fun.
Only if we look each other in the eyes.
Yep. So no, the other two answers are form local community and be involved in the gray market. Alternative economy. We have to create the solution. We can't just sit around and bitch about it. We have to be fundamental pillars in what starts the movements to replace it. They want a great replacement theory, so do I. So get good. Let's work together. Come to these local festivals. Come to Midwest Preparedness Project. Go to Self-Reliance Festival. Go to Kentucky Sustainable Living. Go to Sow the Land. Go to all these. Go to Prep Stock. Go to all of these things and meet people like you. Stop using the excuse that you're an introvert to justify your inaction. Stop using the fact that because you're an American and you're slightly overweight and you're maybe close to being type 2 diabetic, that, oh, well, there's not much I can do now. I might as well just stay stagnant. Get off your ass and do something. Go to the range. Go practice starting fires. Raise your own food. Raise a garden. Learn skills. I'm smelting now. I'm 3D printing. I'm doing all kind of stuff I wasn't doing 2 years ago. I plan to be a maker. I plan to make things when the lights go out. And I plan to do it in ways that don't require electricity. But I'm learning foundational scientific stuff and technical stuff now that I can use to do that. And a lot of my friends are doing the same thing. Another thing, stop being friends with worthless people. Stop surrounding yourself with energy leeches who are only going to sit there and bring you down. Stop being friends and rewarding people with social capital who aren't aligned with your point of view. Stop rewarding people who are engaging in behaviors that are wrong. It doesn't matter if they're your kids or your best friend from high school. You can love people without giving them your social capital. You have to start making hard decisions with who you spend your time with, how you spend your time, and what you're doing in that time. And if you're not operating to build community and in the gray economy, and if you're not doing the parallel stuff, then all you're doing is whining.
To expand on a couple of things you said, the first one, the problems with culture and society are where all this stems from. And you cannot change culture and society unless you interact with it. And the only way you're going to interact with it in a meaningful manner is if you become part of the community and you change the culture and society in your community. Right? And that means you got to be politically active locally. You need to be active in religious aspects and school aspects, even if you're not a parent. You should be doing it. That's how you do it. And the other one is you are a reflection of your 5 closest friends. So I had to sit down. I had to sit down and really think long and hard about that. And once I changed my friends, my outcome changed. My output changed. So you want to surround yourself, and you surround yourself by meeting them. You got to go out and meet them. You got to put yourself out there. Freesteading, the Discord for Midwest Preparedness, go to the festivals, you name it, it's out there. You do it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Spags, but if anybody wants to contact you to ask how to do it or to bounce ideas off you, are you willing to engage with them?
Yep. There have been people that have texted, called, and emailed me after our lives, and I will do my best to get in touch with everybody who comes after me. Look, man, you can't claim to be part of the community and then shut yourself off because you're too busy. You can't allow the concept of prepper celebrity or building your own personal, prepper army or building your own thing to get in the way of forming the community, because your island's only as good as the water surrounding it, and your community is only as good as the people you choose to interact with in it. And your business endeavors are only going to be as good as the amount of sweat you put into it. You got to put time into this stuff. And so, yeah, I get overextended a lot, but I'm absolutely willing to overextend myself because at this stage, I'm not hiding. It's very obvious. Anyone who's watched anything I do, anyone who's watched my channel or heard me talk at these festivals understands I don't hide. I don't care about your feelings. I'm going to say exactly what I believe to be just and right. If I'm proven wrong, I'm proven wrong. But at the same point, we can't allow the introvert excuse to continue. Get off your ass and do something.
So Little on Prepper says, after the last 5 years, I'm not sure I have 5 friends left. They don't have to be friends in the idea that they're buddies or something. It can be a mentor. I mean, find somebody that's doing it as you see right, and strike up a conversation with them and become an associate. Learn from, let them be a mentor. Become a student. I'm a firm believer that when you walk into the room, you should not be the best person in the room. You should not strive to be the best person. Let's put it that way. You can be the best person and be surrounded by people that you're trying to share your experience with, but you should always strive to be around people that are going to raise your boat, right?
Yeah.
And then
you don't want energy leeches. You don't want the people who are going to take more than they give all the time. We all take a little more than we give sometimes, and we all give a little more than we take sometimes. And most of the time, we're at kind of this weird net neutral because we're too busy with our nose in our own business. But you have to. How is it that Jordan Peterson puts this? If you're in a room with 10 people and you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right. Exactly.
Go to a different room. It doesn't mean you can't still be friends with the guys behind you, but it means everybody should be striving to better themselves and be a better version of themselves today than they were yesterday. And if everybody did that in the prepper movement, and everybody did that in the homesteading movement, and everybody did that in the freesteading movements, guess what? We would all be a little bit better all the time. We'll never be good. We'll never be perfect. We can't possibly achieve the things that the lofty-eyed, altruists think we can, but we can certainly try. And we can certainly be so busy trying to be good that we can't possibly find the time to be bad.
And Bird Lady just said something that I think a lot of people feel the same way. I've pretty much cut myself off from almost everybody. I think that was part of the plan in 2020, 2021.
Of course it was.
I think they mean for people to be like that. So, again, we've got to go out on a limb, make ourselves uncomfortable.
I'm looking at her profile picture, wondering how the hell she doesn't have 20 friends. She got a
Right.
chicken in the picture. She's looking at a chicken. She's obviously
Right.
living it. I mean, come to a festival. You might find some people that you like. You might find some very like-minded people.
Let's touch on the surrounding yourself with five people that will lift you up.
Okay.
Are they, in my personal experience, some of my best mentors, some of the people that lifted me up the most, were the meanest, most hard-ass people in the world.
Yep.
They were not nice.
No.
Oh, they weren't nice. They weren't good.
Nice people won't say the things you need to hear to sand the rough edges off yourself.
Right. Exactly. So her chickens are, you know what? As long as they're not talking back to you, it's okay to have a one-sided conversation with them. But as soon as they start talking back, you need to go spend some time with some people, okay?
Dude, if they're talking back to you, I want to know what kind of molly you're on.
Who are my top 5 people? You know,
that's a dangerous question, because if you answer it impulsively, you're accidentally going to leave people out, because there's more than 5 people we interact with.
I don't have 5. I've got more than 5 people. I have surrounded myself over the past couple of years. Angela and I have surrounded ourselves over the last 5 or 6 years with people that raise us up. And I think Patrick's trying to get a attaboy out of me. I think he's trying to get me to say he's one of them.
Well, slap him on the ass and tell him good job.
Yeah, you know what? He is one of the people. He's one of the people in our circle and Spags is one. I would not have Spags on at a regular basis if Spags did not challenge me and make me think about things that I don't normally think about and make me a better person. And everybody in our community that I talk about on a regular basis all raise me up. You know, I honestly a lot of times feel like I am out of the group of people. I am the one that's getting the most benefit out of having them as friends. You know, but Tag makes the point whenever I say that to him, he makes the point that he feels the same way. You know, and that's what you want. That's the kind of relationship you want with people, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you what. One of the most successful people I know that I interact with. Personally, he's a great guy, but when it comes to being honest and telling you the truth, he's probably one of the most brutal. And that's John Willis.
Yeah,
John Willis will tell you the truth, and he doesn't give a damn if it hurts your feelings or not. But he never does it to be harmful, and that's why when he does it, it's not evil, it's not bad, because he's doing it from a moral framework that he's trying to lift you up, literally lift you up.
SGF.
Well, thank you very much. That makes me feel good. Kind of uncomfortable, but it makes me feel good, and I mean that in a good way. I mean,
maybe he wants to be your cellmate.
I don't like that sort of praise. I never have. You know, I was always the reluctant leader when I was in the Marine Corps.
Okay. Well, SG just asked a question. Spags, how do we help people to be brave? Grumpy, stop not taking the productive comments. Stop being uncomfortable when he tells you that you make him better, and accept it. Part of the male experience is learning how to harness the ego, because we are ego-driven creatures, and most men are never taught to harness the ego. So the ego harnesses them. An ego that is unharnessed leads to pride, and pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. That's not by accident. That didn't make the 7 deadly sins by accident. You know, homosexuality didn't make the 7 deadly sins. Gambling didn't make the 7 deadly sins. Broader terms made the 7 deadly sins, and pride is one of those. Now, of course, the other things can fall under things like gluttony and all that other stuff, and perversion. Understand that. But consider that part of how we make each other brave is to absolutely praise each other when someone fucking does it. So part of the bravery is learning to accept the compliment, because men specifically, even though we're ego-driven, we are horrible at accepting compliments, because one, it either pads our ego and it makes our head way too fucking big, or we go, oh, I don't like it when people say that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So it's funny.
Learn to be thankful.
It's funny that you say that, because I've actually had a video in a can for about 3 weeks that's going live on Saturday that is specifically about pride getting in the way of accepting help.
Yes.
And becoming a better person. And yes, and I understand. I understand it's something, and I've always had to work on it, and I will probably always have to work on it because I feel uncomfortable with being praised for just doing what I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean?
But what
You
else
know
are
what I
you
mean?
supposed to be praised for? Doing what you're
When you
not
go
supposed to
when
do?
I go above and beyond what I'm not supposed to
Why?
do.
Why do we have to? Why can't we just receive simple praise for doing the
Hey,
things? If we just did what we were supposed to do, nobody would have to go above and beyond because we're all doing what we're supposed to do.
stop busting my chops. I already told you I need to work on it.
Tell Patrick thank you. Tell him thank you right now.
Patrick, thank you very much. I do appreciate it, especially coming from you. In all seriousness, seriously, you know. But I don't think I'm alone in this. So, okay.
I got another question here. Spags, what's your opinion on getting paid under the table versus getting a 1099? Taxation is theft. All taxation is theft. Cheat. Pay as little taxes or no taxes if you possibly can. And if that means no 1099, it means no 1099. It is not an employer's job to provide you with health care, daycare, and all that stuff. If they can do it, great. All that an employer should give you is the money agreed to for services rendered that have been agreed hitherto for. So if you render services and they give you $100 bill and the IRS is none the wiser, good for you.
I'm gonna say either Wes was trolling or he hasn't been paying attention because he's been around long enough to know the answer to that question. Okay. Let's. You want to take some more before we head out for the evening?
Spag says, are birds real and should I get my 4th booster shot? Birds are absolutely real. I shoot them all the time in the marsh and I raise them. But we do know that the CIA had a special patent specifically for reanimating dead bird corpses and putting cameras in the eye. That's also something that WikiLeaks showed. So 4th booster, sure. Why not get your next tetanus shot? We should all have a tetanus shot. Nobody wants to have a nail go through their boot and end their apocalyptic blaze of glory. Yeah, get your tetanus shot.
Do me a favor. I want you to repeat something you said. You posted in chat the other night about condoms and toilet paper because
Okay.
I think it's very pertinent to this conversation. I really do.
Okay.
Tell everybody in chat what you posted in the live the other night.
So in the WROL live the other night, Grumpy was hosting a WROL live and he had Local Prepper and Jester Doom and Chad. Is that his name? Who was the fourth?
Dale.
Dale. And they were all playing WROL, which WROL is pretty much the new and improved version of Conflicted. It's without the rule of law. It's this right here, which I do believe that Grumpy Acres has an affiliate code for.
Yeah.
So make sure you use Grumpy Acres' affiliate code. Grumpy, you need to make sure Yoda puts that in the chat. It's a scenario-based card game where someone reads a card and it's detailed and it gives you just enough information to make everybody want to argue about it. And this particular card was about, post-apocalyptic world, a new plague is vanquishing society, blah, blah, blah. And a new vaccine has come out. And as a community leader, would you push people to take the vaccine? And everyone's, of course, giving the right answers based on what they want. All these guys are like, yeah, I don't know, and they're being very serious. So I jumped in the chat and I'm like, we can't even get people to put condoms on knowing it prevents the spread of herpes. Why the fuck should I give a shit about buying toilet paper to prevent the spread of a respiratory disease? I mean, it's a fair question if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly. It goes directly to this. The good people wanting to do the right thing make a bad decision. They start believing absurdities, and it leads to tearing society apart. And I completely missed. I'm glad Local Prepper said something about it because I completely missed it. But and that's what this whole conversation tonight has been about. We gotta learn how to differentiate and get past it all. All right, man. Listen, hour and 40 minutes. We're getting towards the end. You got anything you want to tell anybody before we go? Tell everybody what you got going on. I know you got Midwest Preparedness Festival.
Yep, Midwest Preparedness is May 7th through the 12th. We're opening the gates at noon to the public on Tuesday. Speakers will be Friday and Saturday. We have a giveaway Friday. We have a giveaway Saturday. That's how we fund the project at this point. We will have some vendors. We are going to have live entertainment. We are going to have barter events. Grumpy hosts a seed exchange on Friday nights, and then we have Barter Town on Saturday nights. There's a potluck on Saturday. Go to www.midwestpreparednessproject.com. Go to Midwest Preparedness Project on Facebook. If you're still on that satanic platform, and if you are, I'm going to pray for you tonight. You can go on Discord to the Real Midwest Preparedness Project. You can find us on YouTube. We are on Rumble. We are on all the alternative stuff. You can find Midwest Preparedness on MeWe, on Freesteading, on Gab. But quite frankly, we have like 16/15ths of a person over there. So like, unfortunately, most of it happens on Discord, Facebook, and YouTube. So you can find us there. And Grumpy's screen has gone black. The CIA has found him. This is the awkward silence your parents warned you about. But Joseph, yeah, make sure you send me that email, BobbySpags79 at gmail.com. Uh-oh. I'm on the other side of the screen. Is anybody seeing this?
There, I'm back. Hang on a second.
Illuminati confirmed.
Yeah, hang on.
This is what it was like making phone calls from Iraq. You heard that going on in the background all the time.
Well, why is it? Oh, I know why.
Here, Patrick's wife made me this. This is the only hat I've got at the moment in here.
Okay, how's that?
That's so much better. Patrick, if you're still on, have Tara look.
Luckily, I had a second camera running. I don't know what that is. That feed just completely crapped the bed.
Well, you know.
See, folks, this is what happens. This is what happens whenever we start getting too close to the truth and we start pushing the limits. All right. And this is what we want to happen.
Yeah.
You know, was that hat filled with aluminum foil?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, this is the one that Tara made me. So
okay.
I wear it quite often. And then those who watch my videos know this hat. I wear this hat most of the time, and in the summer, keep the hat off myself.
Okay, well, with that little bit of excitement behind us, God, I'm missing the chat just caught up too. How dare me? Illuminati confirmed. Tara, tell Tara that's an awesome job from Skanes. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Again, if you want to support the channel, grumpyacresfarm.com, we're getting that fixed. We've also got a bonfire t-shirt site for more designs. We will see everybody at Midwest Preparedness Festival. And right now it looks like we're going to Kiowa for the Preparedness Festival there.
Good. Give Shelly a big hug for me. She's a great gal.
We're going to be at Kentucky Sustainable Living and Self-Reliance Festival. That's probably going to be it for the spring. We got a lot we need to do around here, especially with everything that's queuing up to happen in the world. We got a lot of stuff we got to take care of.
Here's a hint. Patrick and I are unable to travel this spring, but that doesn't mean other people are.
Okay. It looks like you two. What? Skanes is talking in code right now.
Because our screens kept switching while you were having your technical difficulties. We were square dancing.
Hey, I don't know what's going on. That feed on that other camera is still. I can see it here. I can see myself on the camera here, but it's as far as the backstage, it is dark as all get out.
Aren't you on Lord Elon's internet?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. You gotta do what you gotta do, right?
I get it.
All right, folks. Listen, thank you for stopping by. Go check out Spags' channel. Go check out MidwestPreparednessFestival.com. Discord. There's a lot of good stuff going on the Midwest Preparedness Discord. Go to Freesteading. Great way to meet people and make yourself better. Surround yourself with better people. Most of all, I want everybody to go out tomorrow, wake up, and live a life done free.